Hello, and welcome to the delicious recipe here on UPRN. And it's out of New Orleans, the US, that we broadcast out of. And if you're watching along, you can be checking us out on YouTube. We're on the UFO Paranormal Radio Show, UFO Paranormal Radio. UFO Paranormal Radio is done twice, and the UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. We are also on Twitch, United Public Radio. We're also on Twitter, and we're on iTunes, iCloud, anywhere else that podcasts are being done there, SoundCloud as well. So if you're watching there or you're listening live, you can do that. And also, another thing to mention there too is that UnitedPublicRadio.com, UPRN.com, I believe it is. They do have a site there where you can become a paid member, and there's a whole bunch of extra bonus content that's available there that you can see from all the many other hosts. And it's just stuff that you don't get it for free, but I'm not sure what the price is for that. But you can go check it out over there, and there's lots of bonus extra content. So tonight I called this one Trail Mix 2.0, because just like Trail Mix, there's so many different things that are in there, tasty bits of nuggets that you can have. And that's always the thing there. With the delicious recipe, we throw everything in the pot and we see how it tastes at the end. And that's the whole thing about it. We're just looking for questions, asking questions, and looking for answers. And that's just the way it is, meeting interesting people and that. So tonight I'd like to welcome our guest there, Dave Petrella. And you just tell people a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing there. And we'll get in. It's interesting for me is how I got to meet him there. Was from Lore, my other half, and he had done stuff with Oak Island. So we'll get into the Oak Island stuff there later. But Dave, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Del. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm an astrologer. I'm also a biologist and spiritual guide, which really encompasses kind of all of the religious traditions and spiritual traditions, and even the non-spiritual, well, like say paganism, stuff like that. Basically anything energetic that has to do with a higher understanding and higher consciousness. That's where the spiritual guidance falls under. And then, like you mentioned, I'm also an Oak Island theorist. I was invited to Oak Island in 2017. I live in the States. I actually live in Texas, so it's a bit of a drive. But I spent a lot of time in not just Nova Scotia, actually, where Oak Island is, but I've been a lot of time in the Yukon, actually, because I used to go back and forth between Alaska in the lower 48, and a huge amount of time in BC as well. And I've also been through not a huge amount of time, but I've definitely been through Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario a little bit, not too much. And I grew up in the Northeast, so I've been to Montreal a couple times. So I know Canada really well, actually. That's kind of a nice connection we have.
Mhm.
And anyway, so I was invited to Oak Island in 2017, and I did it's called a war room presentation. And so I did a full, it's a couple hour presentation. Then we went out into the field and did a lot of work out in the field and through the woods and measuring and all kinds of things of that nature. And unfortunately, it never aired on the actual show. But I had a great experience, and I learned things about that island and actually about geography and about people and about the First Nations. Really things that I actually had never been exposed to before. So it was a really great experience, and I'm still really closely involved in with the community. I'll put it that way, with the Oak Island community. There's a few groups on Facebook, that a lot of people like to follow for that story and everything. So I participate in the chat room and the podcast a lot. If people want to check that out, actually, if you want to check that out too, you can head over to my Facebook page. It's just Dave Petrella. You'll find me. You'll see the picture. It looks exactly like me. And you can follow along with that. They do a recap every week. So for people who maybe don't have cable, or they don't have time to watch a show or something, you can always listen to the live stream, and we do a really good job. Jeff Freeman, he's the host. He does a really great job.
Awesome there. And we'll get into a little bit more of Oak Island later on, but you do have a board there behind us. You want to explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. This is the zodiac. So astrology, specifically Western astrology, is based off of this. Western astrology is also called. Can you see it? Okay, Del. You want me to bring it
Yeah,
up a little
yeah,
bit?
yeah.
Okay.
I can see it good there. Yeah.
Western astrology is also called tropical astrology, and the origin point essentially is ancient Egypt. Well before the pharaohs. This goes back since to really to the beginning of humankind. Whenever people believe that is, I have different ideas about it, but there was also Mesopotamia and Samaria, which is really just down the road from Egypt. It's really not that far, and of course the trade routes went back and forth for thousands and thousands of years. And so a lot of the astrological traditions, I think, probably ended up being combined with the Egyptian astrological traditions, and then we got really this tradition. Now, of course, in Mesopotamia, they talk a lot about some of the sky gods, like the Anunnaki, and their traditions with that. They add a few things in, but it's essentially very similar. And even over in ancient India, it's called the Vedic tradition. Uh, they don't use they don't use this diagram. They actually use it's like a diamond shape diagram. It's got four sides and it has the points on the four sides. So there's a slightly different. And I'll just explain really quickly the biggest difference. Okay, so Western astrology, which is this that you guys are looking at, this is called the zodiac with the 12 signs in it. It also explains, if you can read this, you got the spring equinox over here, then you've got the summer solstice, the fall equinox, and then the winter solstice. Even if you're not doing astrology, this is something that astronomers observe in terms of the different points, how much sunlight you're getting, when is the start of the season, things like that. You would have had to have known all of this when you were planting, obviously way back before the communication was so limited. If you don't get your seeds in at the proper time and you don't get it harvested, then you might not even survive. So it's very important, even for the people who didn't ascribe meaning to the different signs. You still had to know when the sun was at what point because your life depended on it. You had to
Right.
farm and you had to store things and get inside, before it got too cold, before you couldn't work outside.
Yeah, that
So
was the
many,
thing there. I just wanted to interrupt you
yeah,
because
yeah.
I've done a couple of shows with this with Valerie Ventura about during the equinoxes and stuff like that, the quarter points of the year, and how
Mm-hmm.
celebrations and how these uh, uh, what is ceremonies that would go on there, like with the harvest and with the planting, and then at winter time where Christmas is, and then other times, and how they sort of it was incorporated in the lore back then, and how people's minds where you get these little small little fairies and goblins and that, and Santa Claus and evil spirits at Halloween and stuff like that. And this all really sort of ties together in that sort of when Christianity sort of mowed through everything, they tried to reinvent it all there. But this is all like it was important to life, I guess, mostly in the northern hemisphere, I guess, eh?
Well, yeah, Western astrology is based off of the northern hemisphere because um, all of the major cities are in the northern hemisphere. That was the focal point because that's where they were located. So, which means not wasn't Cairo, but roughly where Cairo is. There were several cities along the Nile and everything, and then Mesopotamia, that's still above the equator, and even actually all of ancient India is above the equator as well. So all of the astrological traditions are above the equator, and that's really the primary reason it's focused on the northern hemisphere. But the other thing too, Del, is that especially with the flat Earth model, and I actually teach both because I can't, and like my friend Ryan Stacy, I actually work with an organization called TESSA. It's short for the Experiencer Support Association. They actually are based in Ontario as well, Penetanguishene.
Okay,
And
that's where a
so,
military base is.
yeah, okay, yep. So they do basically support for experiencers of paranormal events and UFO events and all this kind of stuff. And I've been teaching on that platform, doing astrology and talking about ancient teachings and everything. But in any case, I'm trying to remember why I brought that up. Northern Hemisphere. Oh, right. Okay. So, and what we were talking about is one of the topics that we talk about a lot is the flat Earth model. And the flat Earth model features, of course, the North Pole at the center of the diagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's part of the other reason for astrology being in the North, because everything really, really the schematic is that you have the equator, you have the Tropic of Cancer, which actually the Tropic of Cancer is equivalent to the very top of the zodiac here, and the reason is because Cancer, the sign of Cancer, is right over here. It's the sign that kicks off the summer
Yep.
solstice season. That's why it's called the Tropic of Cancer. It's 23.5 degrees north of the equator, and then down here, Capricorn kicks off the winter solstice. That's a 23.5 degrees south of the equator, and the equator is right here at the equinox line right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so these points is actually, it's called the ecliptic, and that's the path of the sun through the year. So the sun never gets above the Tropic of Cancer, and that's why anything above, that's roughly the Florida Keys, for people who are trying to visualize that, roughly Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right at the Tropic of Cancer line. And so anything above that, you're going to experience seasons, varying levels of seasons. But if you're within, this is called the tropics, you're within the tropics, it's warm all year, and you get two seasons. You get the wet and the dry. So anyway, the reason I brought up flat Earth is because the center of that model is centered on the North Pole, and all of the ancient people knew that, and they happened to be living closer to the North Pole than, for instance, people living south of the equator, or a lot further from that. So knowing a little bit about kind of the geography models, and both models really you want to know, so you can try to think about it for yourself. There's a lot on that topic, but also,
Did any of the cultures there, like say in the South America or Australia or the Philippines below the equator, have a similar sort of setup like this? Were they anything like they had their own sort of zodiac that was similar, or was it totally different?
well, actually, I've actually never been asked that question, Dell. It's a really excellent question. I do know that Adam's calendar, which is in South Africa, is definitely set up to the equinoxes and the solstices, and that's obviously well below the equator. So I'm sure it was everywhere in the world. It's just that the focal point happened to be north of the equator because that's where the powerhouse civilizations were established, and that's
Right.
where they taught from. That's where they lived. So,
Mm-hmm. Like I'm just
and
saying,
if
I know with down in South America when they have when they're going through all those civilizations, like the Mayan calendar, they had their own sort of set of rules that was or set
yeah,
of beliefs that were different. And you mentioned that other thing that the 4 point, what was that called there that you said there? Instead of the zodiac, there's a 4 point part.
like the four gates, you mean? The four gates of the
Or was it? I might be totally. Maybe I missed that part there, or didn't see that. I think it was part of like the 4 seasons or 4 points that you had
Oh
said. I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Yeah, the two equinoxes and the solstices, those are the four seasons. And
Yeah,
the
but
four
I was just wondering if the how it was if it was reversed for people in the southern part of the hemisphere because they're looking at like the Southern
yeah,
Cross. They're not looking at the North Star, right? They're looking at
right.
something different, and that's the whole point that
Yep.
I was looking at there. Yeah.
Well, and that's of course just because of their perspective, because they can't see. Well, I don't know the exact, the sky. I've actually never been in the southern hemisphere, so it's hard for me to comment a lot about it. But I have to say that no, you're right. You see a different set of constellations at different points in the year,
Mm-hmm.
because it's in a different part of the sky. And the thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, Del. The thing about that is that the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere is the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
So December 21st up here, we're obviously very cold. It's very hot south of the equator, and well, specifically south of the Tropic of Capricorn. They're having their real summer season. So it is reversed. Yeah.
Yeah, see that was the thing that we were sort of laughing about there when we were doing our winter solstice one. Is that what did people down in Australia and New Zealand do on December 25th? Like the Santa Claus comes in a sleigh with reindeers with it snowing there, and they're out on the beach, they're surfing and fishing.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
People, if you're aware of the tradition, you really can celebrate it anywhere. You just have to be aware that um, there's going to be different qualities, and there's different qualities to different geographical points on the Earth too. And a lot of that's because of the path of the sun, and just really, it's actually because of the energy grid, the energy network that crosses the Earth. It's not just so it's all one system, of course. But if the other thing that's interesting too, and I kind of haven't thought about this in a while, but my friend Santos Bonacci, who's a very, very big flat Earth proponent, and he's actually the person that taught me astrology. That kind of I got it kicked off with. So thankful to him. He's really great. Um, The thing is that supposedly, and this supposedly supports the flat Earth model of the Earth, that when the sun's, and people can comment on this. Anyone who lives below the Tropic of Capricorn, I'd love to hear your input. But supposedly, when the sun sets in the southern hemisphere, it's gone very fast. And you know how like in the summer, Dell, it kind of lingers with at the
Hmm.
sunset, you still have some light. Well,
Yeah.
supposedly it doesn't happen in the southern hemisphere. It's just gone. I mean, and the reason is because there's a different diameter of the you're on the far outer circle of the flat Earth model if
Right.
you're in the southern hemisphere. So the dynamics have changed.
Hmm. Yeah, like I worked up in northern Saskatchewan, prospecting there, and we're in the winter time, and we noticed like when we had the daylight and that when it came to a certain time, like it was 4 o'clock, boom, gone, it's dark, and then like didn't get light till like 9 a.m. in the morning. Like it was like there was really quick changes in small sunlight and stuff like that, eh? But
Hmm.
yeah, it's different. And like down in the south, this is a part that I'd ask you there too as well. And if you're doing the astrology off of the flat Earth model, and people are looking down that are down in the southern hemisphere, like way down there, like Australia, New Zealand, they're not seeing the same stars that astrology people that's supposed to have been done up in the northern hemisphere. How would they have the same sort of, I guess, conclusions? I guess.
About astrology, you mean?
Yeah,
Well, what it is that
like
the ang-
on the flat Earth model, right? How it's laid out is that
hmm
everybody should be looking at the same above
Oh
as
yeah,
things are going there, but down in the southern hemisphere, they're not looking at the same above. They're looking at a different one. Like that's a
yep.
part that's talk about how flat Earth. I see. I'm not really a flat Earth person. I think
Yep.
we live on a really twisted globe or whatever, like a squished grate with water all around it. There, it's not perfectly spherical.
hmm
And if we were on a flat thing, everybody should be seeing the same thing, but they don't, and we do.
Well, okay. What I would say to that is that the perspective, when you're talking about distances
Mm-hmm.
specifically, that the perspective shifts a lot, and it shifts pretty fast. I mean, even if for people who have traveled a lot, you can see, if you're coming up on a prominent geological feature or something, sometimes you can see for 20 or 30 miles away. You're coming up on it; it's tiny, really tiny on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're even like another maybe 5, 6 miles away from it than that, it disappears from your view, but it's still there. And now some people claim that's because of the curvature of the Earth. There's also just the mountains and stuff that could get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, and part of it probably has to do with our limited scope of vision, is how far you can actually see something if it's out in the distance. It might still be there, but it just might be so small we can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say it's generally it's perspective, in
Okay.
that when you're talking about distances, it's still up there. It's called the fixed stars. All the constellations, they move around the North Star,
Mm-hmm.
which right now is Polaris, but it hasn't
Right.
always been. Um, and you're going to be seeing you're not going to be seeing the same things, but it's all still up there. It's just to your perspective, you can't see it because of the distances. That's my
Right.
best explanation for that.
Yeah, that's just the whole point out of, I guess, when I was looking at the models, because I heavily went into this whole deep dive into flat Earth there a few years ago,
Hmm.
and things that where they had the center North Pole was at the center of the disk, which would be Sirius would be right above the top there that was pointing there, that everything's spinning around. Everybody on that whole flat Earth,
Polaris, right? Though.
Polaris, yeah, Polaris, everybody on that spinning flat plane should be seeing towards there. And that was the whole point, right? If you're looking at it as a cone going down, doesn't matter how far you're off the cone, you should still be able to see the one in the center. And but people in the southern hemisphere cannot see that,
Yep.
and so
Well, it's
that was my sort of one little point that I had against the
yep.
flat Earth narrative on there. But if it were like a, you know what, I don't discourage anybody from finding out and asking questions about stuff, because that's what we're all here for, right? To go and
That's right. That's right.
discover. Like don't begrudge anybody. But
Well, and
I'll
you,
let you continue there.
sorry, Del. I was going to say, and you probably know because you're a Gemini, right?
Yep.
So you probably know the value, and it's very easy for you to look at both sides of everything.
Mm-hmm.
and try to be very objective about it. Now, again, talk about astrology. Uh, I have a fairly large component of Gemini. It's not in one of my three signs, but it's a really big gift that I have, which means that I'm very good at being able to look at both sides, and I don't feel like I necessarily have to decide one of the sides. What I
Mm-hmm.
do, and I think Laura Lee talks about this too. She has this. I know you know what it is. She has a phrase she uses, but you just keep all the information on the back burner
Mm-hmm.
because you're never gonna know when you need it, and it also makes you really credible, really interesting, and really open-minded. And most people like that.
Yeah.
And like Ryan Stacy says with the Tesla organization, you know, short of being an astronaut and going up there and looking down myself, I can't really ever know. And so with all the conspiracies and all this stuff, I don't even know who necessarily I'm going to trust on these topics. For me it's not NASA. I don't trust NASA. I'll just put that out there for
Mm-hmm.
multiple reasons. But the thing is that if you were to be able to get up there yourself, then I would feel like, oh, I can make a good statement on this now, what I feel. And the other thing I brought up too, Del, before I forget, is that the flat Earth model of the solar system, it actually accommodates for the domes. It's based on a flat Earth with domes above it, and there's essentially 10 domes above the flat plane. Now, if you were to go up, I guess, high enough into the atmosphere, you're eventually going to be actually looking through that dome. One of those domes you're going to be looking through. So one of my arguments possibly is that if people who go up to space and they say, "Oh no, the Earth is round," well, you know what? What if you're looking through like a prism, or you're looking through the atmosphere and it's bending the light
Mm-hmm.
because the model is an actual rounded dome. If you look through something like that, if you've done science experiments, you know that what you're looking at, you're not seeing it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be flat down there, but you can't see it because you're looking through I guess it would be a convex piece of glass essentially,
Right.
which bends it, and now it looks like it's a sphere. That's
Mm-hmm.
something people should keep in mind, because I wouldn't necessarily jump right to the conclusion of one way or the other. Just keep all of these things in mind.
See, I always had this one thing there that a lot of part is in perspective in the way you look at things, and I was sort of
Oh yeah,
people always think about, oh, it says look outside the box and stuff like that, and I always sort of have this thing is that, why am I looking at the box? Maybe I should be looking at a bigger picture. I always had this sort of like this little riddle there with people. I always ask them. I says, okay, if you have 24 people living in every time zone around the Earth, and they automatically arrived at the center of the Earth, what time is it?
oh great, yeah.
Because everybody's going to have a different thing. And it's the same thing if they all meet up on a spaceship on the moon and they're looking down at the Earth. What time did they all arrive?
Right.
They're all going to have something different, right?
Yep, that's true. And your time zone, this is interesting too. I've done a lot with this. If you drive across a continent, for me, well, I've done both. I've done Canada and the United States, which is basically all of North America. And so as you're moving into the different time zones, you look, obviously you notice in your clock, it's like, oh, I just lost an hour, I just gained an hour, and you have to accommodate for that in your day, of course. And then it throws off your biological clock for like a
Mm-hmm.
little bit until to calibrate. But the other thing that happens, and I don't know how much people pay attention to this, but if you're sensitive to your environment, you can actually feel well, one thing is the geology. So the bedrock is made of different things. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have quartz or granite or whatever. There's different radioactive elements that are present and that change things and change the energy. But setting all that stuff aside, even, you actually if you think about the Earth as a very large grid, whether it's a flat grid or a sphere grid, whatever it is, it's been designed to have specific. And actually, Laura Lee talked about this the other night, I think, with the meditation
Mm-hmm.
uh, stream that they had. And she was saying the different chakras at different points on the earth and how they relate to different points and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a real thing, because um, I can feel the energy shifting as I move either up or down in latitude or longitude. And, it's like roughly, I guess it's 1 degree per 60 miles. You'd have to convert that. I don't do metric really. I could look quickly, but 60 miles is about 1 degree of the Earth if
Hmm.
you're moving. And so, every time once you move, you'll eventually start to notice, wait a minute, the energy feels different here. And it's specifically because I'm somewhere different on the Earth.
Yep.
And
Oh,
all the
totally agree there, because that was the whole thing about this well, with the part with ley lines and energy and way things are connected. Like the Earth is a big magnet, and if anybody looks at how magnetic fields run out of a magnet, they run in lines and they
right.
overlap, go this way and that way. And there's been lots of people say the air feels different here, or the it
Mm,
feels different here, right? And there's been a lot of really weird spots that are around the globe where things are charged differently, just with whatever it is. I think you guys have in the states there. I think it might be in Michigan or Illinois. There, the magic spot, or there's a house where stuff is like things look and feel differently. There's a lot of
oh,
energy out of there.
it's like that vortex house or whatever, that
I think
idea.
it's something like that. I think they used it in.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the TV show American Gods, they went to this place, and it's actually a real place where you can go there, and things sort of act a little bit differently than how they do 60 miles down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's funny you bring it up, and there's quite a few of those places across. I know at least the United States because I've seen them as I've been driving. But there's another one, Dell, and you guys might know more about this since it's in Canada. But it's called, I believe it's called Magnetic Hill. It's in New Brunswick.
Yeah, that's the
It's
optical illusion hill. Yeah.
okay. Have you guys been to that one?
I have lots of friends when I was working out in the oil sands there that had gone there, and they had done experiments. You're actually going downhill, but you're going
Wow.
downhill, but it looks like you're going uphill, and
Well,
you can
that's
just
what they, yeah, yeah, that's what they claim. That's what
yeah.
some people claim. Now, I went there and I did a probably half-hour experiment myself because
Okay.
I'm a scientist. I'm a
Hmm.
scientist first, then I'm a biologist and astrologer and a spiritual guide. But everything I do, I try to keep as much of the data as I can. I try to include as much possible data as I can, where at the same time being open to things that can't necessarily be explained with traditional science.
Right.
So, whereas most scientists are saying, "Oh, I'm only doing data," I'm saying, you know what? I'll do what you guys are doing, but I have to warn you, and I'm gonna make it clear. I'm also feeling the fields. I'm aware of the different energies moving around. Those are things that you can't necessarily quantify. And I try to tell them all the time, like, guys, don't discount this, okay? Because that's not actual science. That's not good science.
Hmm.
Travis Taylor, you know Travis Taylor from Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
been on Oak Island too. Okay, well, I love how he does things because he is a scientist. Obviously, he's got tons of degrees. He's an astrophysicist, all kinds of other things. But he knows what he's seen. Some of the things he's seen in the sky, and I believe he had said that his father always taught him, don't like all the data points you can possibly pull, use them. Don't like say if you're uncomfortable with the UFO topic, don't say, oh, it can't be that because I don't want to talk about that.
Hmm.
The thing to really say is that, I'm going to just look at this just like I'm looking at anything else. And if the data points to it, then as a good scientist, you have to go with the data.
Hmm.
So, I really encourage people to do that. But anyway, so Magnetic Hill, I was out there and I parked. No, I didn't park. Excuse me. I put my car in neutral
Yep.
and I did the same thing. There's a little line that they draw on the pavement there, and you put it in neutral, and it will start to, it looks like it's moving uphill essentially.
Hmm.
So I was out there. I actually took my shoes and socks off because I wanted to feel the energy directly coming into the bottom of the foot. I'm doing all these things, the proper scientific experiment. I did it probably 6 or 7 times, and I'm not convinced it's an illusion actually at all.
Okay.
And part of the reason I say that too, Del, is because when you're coming, I don't even know if people talk about this, but I do a fair amount with geology too. It's
Hmm.
all part of the science discipline. The more you
Yep.
know, the more you can pull from. So I
Yep.
was coming into, wait a minute, let me think about this. Because I'm trying to think what town. I think it's pronounced Deep or Dieppe, New
Yep.
Brunswick. Okay, well, there's another town right next to that. It's a bigger town. I'm trying to remember what the name is. I should know this, but
You
that's where
got
it's
you got St. John's. You got what else you got around there? Fredericton. What are we
it's
around?
it's further east, Del, from both of those. It's close to the Nova Scotia. I'm going to pull it up. I want to see what it is. It's close to the Nova Scotia border. But anyway, so here's the thing: is that when I was driving into town, I'm scanning the skyline and everything, and what I was noticing was that it looks like you're in a giant basin, because all around the outsides, at least for 270 degrees across the horizon, you can see there's a lip. There's a lip, like a jagged lip. It looks like it's high
Right.
high above the skyline. Now, for me, the thing I think about is, okay, so how about a meteor impact? How about a collapsed volcano? And there's a
Hmm.
volcano. It's a volcano, actually, a dormant volcano up in Campbellton, New Brunswick. You
Well,
come
that's what
into
they're
town.
finding now. They're finding more and more volcanic craters and asteroid impacts around the area that can be
Right.
influencing a lot of different things.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so for me, I mean, right off the bat, I'm like, okay, you know what? I see something that looks like it could be a large impact crater, and you have an anomaly here that has to do probably with some kind of iron elements and nickel and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So you really have to start thinking that way. The more you can have available to you, like I was mentioning before, the
Yep.
better conclusions you can come to. And if you stand strong in your opinion, then you have a better chance of convincing other people. And also, if someone comes at you with something to try to negate that, you have like 20 other things in your pocket that you can pull from. Be like, I don't
Right.
believe that because this, or because this, or because this.
Well, now
It's
now that we're over there in that area of the Maritimes,
Yeah, yeah.
we only got about another 15 so minutes that left. Let's go
Okay.
into this part about Oak Island, and this has actually been sort of an interesting story because it's sort of really the way that the myth or the legend of it there. Uh, it's been pirates had treasure, and there's been a lot of stories about the Knights Templar took the Grail. They took the Ark of the Covenant. Maybe it went to up to like Ireland. That's one theory. Another part is that it came across to the Maritimes into Canada, and then there's a whole story about Samuel Ball and about his cabbage fields, and that he had found some buried treasure that was there, that he after he massed all this stuff there. And then there was, I can't if I remember the name, Daniel McGinnis, back in he was born from 1758 to 1827. He had found a tree out on Oak Island that was sort of limbed a little bit weird with a depression. He
Right.
started digging, and he found a slab. He went and got his two friends. They went there and they started digging. They pulled up this flagstone staff, and they kept digging. Then all of a sudden they found a bunch of oak logs all in a row there. They remove those. They dig down 10 feet, find another set of oak logs. And then the story keeps on going from there. They got so far and then they couldn't do it. And then they waited till they got older, came back. But it's sort of an interesting story because there's been so many theories on this place. What is buried down there, like from Shakespeare's original manuals to like Antoinette's jewelry, the Ark, like I said, the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, uh, uh, Captain Kidd, buried treasure, and there's so many different little twists in there. And I had many theories about this there too, and I had wrote to the show there many times and said, why don't you guys do what the Big Dig did, where you go and freeze the ground and excavate everything? I told them that in season 2. I told them that in season 4, and now in
Wow. Okay.
season 8 or 9, it seems like they're going to be doing this now.
Well,
Maybe not, it might have been for me, but now they are doing something smart with the money. So
yep. Okay. Well, I just want to first say, just so I can get back onto what I was piece of information I was looking for. The
yeah.
city is Moncton.
Oh, Moncton. Okay, yeah, yeah.
So if people want to see Magnetic Hill, guys, head over there. And like I said, look at if you're coming into town from the west, look at the horizon. You're going to see it looks like a big lip. You're in the center of like this an anomaly. It looks like. Oh, and by
Okay,
the way, the air and the energy in the ground, they actually feel different once you enter into that basin. And of course I took note of that too. It feels it's kind of peaceful, actually. It's kind of cool, kind of
right.
interesting.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now back to Oak Island here. Okay, so the freeze ring technology, which I think they came out with in season 2, maybe it was very, very early on. They've known about this technology for a long time. Now,
Hmm.
the freeze ring technology would be essentially, it would be prohibitively expensive. Supposedly like 10, maybe $9 or $10 million to keep the ground frozen and to carve out. But basically, what it does is you put a glycol mixture. You demarcate your area, which is like a big circle. I think
Yep.
they were probably about 100 feet wide, maybe a little bit more. And on the edge of the circle, you dig maybe foot diameter holes
Yep. This
all
is
around the circle.
basically what
Put
you're
the
doing is you're putting a whole bunch of series of holes around whatever size diameter you're doing. It's about
right,
150. I think they're doing on this one. They're going to do 150 feet diameter, or so 150. I mean, yeah, diameter circle around the
yeah,
money pit, and drill down there. You put a glycol or was it hydrogen glycol, whatever. You freeze all the ground, and you just keep that pumping, and then you just start digging down and get down to that area where you need to go. So whether they're going down 200 feet or 250 or 300 feet, because I was an iron worker. I worked in Toronto and did a bunch of deep stuff from the basement up, and the digging down is not a problem, and especially when you have water tables that are so high.
right.
They didn't use this stuff, and the big one was the big dig in Boston where they had to freeze the ground to go through. And I was just looking at this, I'm going, why aren't you guys doing this?
I know.
Like it's
Well,
spending all this money drilling holes and then putting in these big caissons that go down like millions and
yeah,
millions of dollars. Like you guys could have just went with this because they're getting heavily invested. Like there's lots of
yeah,
investments, and they're making money off of the History Channel there anyway, so they're they're doing well. And
yeah.
plus the vineyard that the Laginas have there too as well. So
Well, Dale,
I'm
you're completely right. And actually, if because this season 9 now, and
yeah
I think they've known about it since season 1. Actually, to be honest with you, they might have showed it in season 2 about the model. But you're right, and they probably spend like 2 or 3 or 4, I don't even know, $1 million a year anyway.
yeah
So if they did the big dig back into the freeze ring in season 2, there's your $10 million that you've already spent.
yeah
And by the way, no mapping, no questioning. You don't have to
yeah
worry about anything.
right. The riddle is solved.
Yeah, well, you're right. You probably have to go down to about 200 feet
Right.
because there's some anomalies down about 190. You want to see, as deep as possible. But you're right. It's like you can,
You block off all those traps that were there because
yeah, the flood tunnels, right?
what was the part that was written? I wrote it down here because there was a stone that had an engraving on it, but that stone somehow disappeared. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think what it was the tablet 40 feet
The
below
90 foot
two
stone.
yeah 40 feet below 2 million pounds lie buried. And then the legend goes, seven must die before the treasure is revealed, and six have died already that were involved with the dig, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's been at least two interpretations of the stone. One was 10 feet below, one was 40 feet below. So either
Right.
way. But the thing about the one that I think the first one was the 1965 Reader's Digest article, I think it said 10 feet below.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that's important is because they were down and they had a couple guys standing on that 90-foot level of wood that you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
And they took a metal iron bar, and they actually probed down and they hit something solid at about 100 feet.
right.
So that's very good evidence for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it collapsed. I don't know if it was the same. I think it might have been. I don't remember. It was within 50 years either way. But anyway, that collapsed at some point. Everything went down, and then into a slurry of water and
Yeah,
salt
because
water and
water
fresh water.
started coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the thing about that is that well, first of all, if you did the freeze ring, then like we were saying, you don't have to plot or map anything, GPS anything. These drills that they're putting down, I think they're maybe 6-inch drill holes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They migrate through the ground as you drill. It doesn't drill straight down. Then you have to put a gyroscope into it. You probably remember this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you read wherever the bottom of that drill hole is. You read the gyroscope and you see the deviation of the angle. Sometimes it's like quite a bit, like 10 feet off to the side. It's quite a
Mm-hmm.
bit, especially if you're looking for something specific. So I agree 100% with you, Dell. Like freeze it, and then, well, now that you're gonna have to invest another 10 million or more maybe, but if that's what you're doing with your money and you have it and you have the support of the government and the television show, and they're helping to bring money in, then there's really no reason not to do that.
Right. Yeah,
So
because it makes sense to me. It says if what's down there that's supposedly down there supposed to be untold riches, right?
Yep.
Like, what if they go down there, they do this, and there's the Ark of the Covenant? That's worth more than a cajillion dollars, and plus the
Yep.
religious significance that it verifies parts that are in the Bible or something like that, or anything like just the information there that it's way more, it's worth more than just doing all this little nitpicking around. Like, have you watched any of the seasons there lately at all?
Oh
Where
yeah,
this
I'm current on everything, Bill.
where they've
Everything.
abandoned the swamp now to get water to go back into.
Yep.
Yeah, I just watched the latest one. There was just this morning there to sort of catch up, and they never from season one to this season. They I don't think they're no further ahead than they were when they started the first show.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Okay, now here's the thing too, and I'm not sure how many people remember this. Obviously, if people follow it, a lot of people will probably find this familiar. But all right, so the C1 cavity, the C1 caisson, they sent two divers down there. This was
Yeah.
several years ago now. You know this. There's a chamber. We know for a fact there's a chamber down there starting at 170 feet to 190 feet. And I apologize to you guys. I don't have the conversion now, but
That's
it's
okay. We Canadians know both metric
okay. Great.
and imperial.
Okay, great. So it's 170 to 190 feet, about a 20-foot cavity. Half of it is filled with silt. So when the diver got down there, there's only 10 feet between where he was standing and the roof.
Hmm.
And the thing about it is that there's, first of all, there's water flow in this chamber. They felt water moving, so it's either fresh water or salt water or both. Who knows? Um, and the other thing is that they have footage because they sent an ROV, which is a remote operated vehicle. They sent an ROV down before the divers went down,
Yeah.
and they saw some very strange things.
Right.
Things that there's no question at all in my mind that it's not a natural thing. The things that they saw, first of all, was the gold object,
Yeah.
which it looked actually like a cane, kind of like a golden cane, like something that the pharaohs might have on the sarcophagus,
Yeah,
like
that
that
was
king
sort of
cup.
that's questionable. Well, I'll agree to disagree with you on that. It was something that was shiny goldish like, and
Right.
then like a timber,
Yep.
right?
Yep. A lot of that. And then the other thing is that they saw what they thought was like metal netting or mesh, and you could kind of see it was peeking out from the silt. They got
Yeah.
a really good ROV shot on that. The other thing is there's this strange looking hook thing. It looks like it's covered in some kind of tar, and it's pushed up against the side of the chamber wall. And then there's something else that looks like a flower, made of something. I don't know if it's a statue. I have no idea what the thing's made out of. But these things, there's no question in my mind, they do not look like they're supposed to be there. So what I've said too, Dell, is that even if you didn't do the big dig, like, go recover what you already know. There's stuff in there, and like
Yeah.
I know that it was difficult, and they sent the divers down. They were getting back and forth metal detecting hits, then the hits disappeared and everything. Well, really, what they need to do is you need to dredge that chamber. I don't know how you
Yeah.
do it, but I'm sure people are smart enough. You need to seal off the water coming in from that chamber. Then you
Hmm.
need to dredge it, and then you can go in there when it's dry, and you can remove everything.
Hmm. Or
You
just
know,
even
so
like you got to figure what they did with their little robots there in Egypt. They had the robots with the drills and the stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
You could just put a little hook on the end of one of those little submersible robots there, and just go down there and grab and pick up and go. Right.
Well,
There's so much more technology that we have now. Like, we didn't have lidar back 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Like, this is technology that's there. We have way more sophisticated robots now. You got, geez, Boston Dynamics has robots that dance like dogs and do backflips and stuff like that.
right, yeah.
And like all this stuff is available. It does cost a little of money, but for 8 seasons and how many years, they've spent how many millions of dollars. Maybe it was all just to get investments and stuff like that, so they all could make themselves, so they had jobs for the rest of their lives. Who
Well,
who knows about that? But
that's a good point, Dell. And the other thing too is that, for Marty and Rick, and I've worked a lot. I know I got to know Rick fairly well. Marty kind of went back and forth between the island a lot. He wasn't there a lot. But for the brothers, it's really about, also, it's kind of like a reboot of their youth, if you
yeah,
will. So
kids fantasy, yeah, of finding
yeah,
treasure, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, it is. It obviously it's about the treasure too, of course. For Rick,
Hmm.
it's about a lot about the story, a lot about it. Maybe even more for him, it's about the story. So for me, it's like when I think about their perspective, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes a little bit. It's like, like their timeline. It's like for them, it's they've been very successful in their industry, especially with Marty in the energy business, and he had the
Yeah.
first wind farm in Michigan, I believe. He was able to make a lot of money off of that. He's got a lot of other enterprises like the
Hmm.
vineyard you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, if you have like huge amounts of money basically, and it's just that you want to spend time with your brother, during the nice parts of the year, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm thinking they're probably thinking, we'll get to it. We'll get to it, but we're alive and we're gonna take our time. We're gonna do it how we want. But I
Hmm.
agree. I mean, just dig the damn hole, the big hole, and let's
Yeah.
be, you know what though? And then they can hang their hat,
And then they can
whatever's
go
the,
on to the next adventure.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. They can go home and relax for a year and visit all their friends they haven't seen because
Yeah.
they've been on the island.
Like it always like would upset me, especially with doing construction, where you had to do the same job over like 3 or 4 times. And said, okay, no, we want to change it this way. It says we just spent backbreaking work like a whole half a day here doing all this, moving it all here, and now you want it over there, and then let's do that. It says, no, no, I changed my mind. I want it over here now. And you're like, you just want to
Right.
get frustrated. That's like, I don't know. I think in today's thing that people would be smart enough to say, hey, let's use the best thing that we can get to get us down there because everyone else in construction jobs do that. They don't go and waste themselves 7 or 8, 9 seasons waiting to dig a basement.
I know. I know. It's ridiculous. Now, I do have to say this too, though, is that I believe in cycles of time. Of course, I'm an astrologer, and you had mentioned the Mayans too, and actually, the Mayans are also in the northern hemisphere. So they had their advanced astronomy and astrology and everything, but they were still north of the equator.
Okay, we're
Um,
almost out of time here. I'm just looking at it right now.
okay.
Let's tell everybody here where they can go and find you there. We got about 2 minutes left here.
Okay. All right. Fine. All right. Well, yeah. Find me on Facebook, guys. Dave Petrella. Instagram, it's Dave Petrella 12. Twitter, I believe it's Dave Petrella 10. I'm also on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email, davepetrella@hotmail.com. And really, anything. I do birth charts. I do a lot of birth charts. I do relationship matching. I do business applications. I do spiritual guidance and counseling and all kinds of stuff like that. So just send me a message if you want to get a service. Let me know what you're looking for, and I'll help you guys out.
This is awesome there. Thanks a lot, Dave. Actually, I'm really really glad that Laura Lee sort of mentioned you there because like she knows all the stuff that I'm sort of interested in and where I'm sort of been going there. And I think there's a little bit more topics that I think we can go into. I know we only have like an hour or less than an hour anyways to do a show there, but I think there's some more things, not just the Oak Island stuff, but I think there's more things that you're sort of into, and maybe we can talk a little bit more there on the show. And I'd like to have you back if you'd be interested.
Oh yeah, great though. Yeah, and honestly, just pick your topic. I can talk about anything. I'm interested in everything, and I have a lot of background and knowledge on a lot of topics. So whatever you want to do, yeah, I'd be happy to come back.
That's awesome. That's the best way to be. So I want to
Right.
thank you for being here, and to all you guys out there listening. It's been the delicious recipe here on UPRN, and like I said before, you can check out their uprn.com and become a paid member, and check out all the extra bonus content that's available there, and check out the rest of the hosts that are on the network there because this station covers a wide variety of topics in the UFOs, the paranormal, and then we have I think we just have a witch that just joined the station there and stuff like that. So thank you very much for everybody there tuning on. Be safe, and we'll talk to you next week, next Thursday, and have a happy Valentine's Day for you in between. Good night.
Thanks, Del. Thanks, guys.